The unexpected encounter. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. A small human patrol ship, Starfire, glided silently through the darkness. Captain James Harker sat in the command chair, scanning the controls with a sharp eye. He was a soldier first and foremost, known for his quick thinking and calm under pressure. The Starfire was on a routine patrol near the border of known space when an unexpected signal broke the quiet. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," said Lieutenant Murrah, her voice tense. She adjusted her headset, trying to clear the static. "It's weak, but it's definitely alien." "Alien?" Harker frowned, leaning forward. "Can you pinpoint the source?" "It's coming from Sector 9 Gamma. Not far from here," Murrah replied. Harker nodded. "Bring us closer. Let's see what we're dealing with." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The border was a dangerous area, known for occasional skirmishes with alien species. Still, leaving a distress signal unanswered wasn't an option. The Starfire altered course, its engines humming softly. As they approached, a small craft came into view. It floated aimlessly, its sleek, silvery hull glinting faintly in the starlight. The design was unlike anything the crew had seen before. It was undeniably alien, with smooth curves and glowing symbols etched into the metal. "Scan the vessel," Harker ordered. "No life signs," Murrah reported after a moment. "But the systems are active." "Barely." "Prepare to board," Harker said, rising from his chair. His hand rested instinctively on the blaster at his side. "Something doesn't feel right." The boarding team stepped cautiously into the alien craft. The air inside was cool and thin, with a faint metallic taste. Strange symbols adorned the walls, glowing softly in the dim light. Harker led the way, his blaster raised. "Sir, over here," called Sergeant Brooks, pointing to the center of the room. Harker turned and saw what appeared to be a cryo chamber. Inside was a figure, a tall, slender alien with pale, shimmering skin and intricate markings across her face. She was dressed in elaborate robes that glowed faintly, giving her an almost regal appearance. "Is she alive?" Harker asked. Brooks examined the controls. "Barely. The chamber's power is almost out." "Get her out of there," Harker said. "We can't leave her here to die." As Brooks worked on the controls, the alien's eyes snapped open. The sudden movement startled everyone. The chamber hissed as it opened, releasing her into the room. She stumbled forward but quickly regained her balance, her sharp golden eyes fixed on Harker. "Who dares board my vessel?" she demanded, her voice commanding despite her weakened state. Harker stepped forward, keeping his tone calm but firm. "We received your distress signal. We're here to help." "Help," she repeated, her tone dripping with suspicion. "Humans do not help without reason." "Who sent you?" "No one sent us," Harker replied. "We were on patrol. You needed help, and we responded. That's what we do." The alien tilted her head, studying him. "I am Princess Alira of the Valfar," she said finally. "And this is my ship. You will not take it." Harker raised an eyebrow. "Take it?" "Lady, your ship was about to drift into oblivion. We saved you." Before Alira could respond, a sudden hum filled the room. A small round device in her hand began to glow. The symbols on the walls pulsed in response, and the ship seemed to come alive. "What's happening?" Brooks asked, his voice rising in panic. Alira looked at the device in her hand, her expression unreadable. "It's a security measure," she said. "It activates when intruders are detected." "Intruders? We're not your enemies," Harker snapped. "Shut it down." "I can't," Alira admitted, her voice softening. "Once activated, it locks the ship to protect itself. We're all trapped until it deems the threat neutralized." The room trembled as the ship's systems flared to life. Doors sealed shut, and the lights dimmed to a deep red. A robotic voice spoke in a language none of the humans understood. "What's it saying?" Harker demanded. Alira hesitated. "It's scanning us. If it decides we're a threat, it will purge us from the ship." Purge us, Brooks repeated, his face pale. You mean kill us? Alira nodded. Yes. The tension in the room was thick. Harker took a deep breath, trying to think. There has to be a way to stop this, he said. Princess, this is your ship. You must know how to override it. Alira shook her head. This device controls the system, but it responds only to the will of the ship's master, and the ship does not recognize me anymore. Harker frowned. Why not? Alira avoided his gaze. That is none of your concern. It is if we're about to be purged, Harker shot back. The robotic voice grew louder, and the walls began to shift. Panels slid open, revealing glowing orbs that crackled with energy. The ship was preparing to eliminate them. We don't have time for secrets, Harker said firmly. If you want to live, you'll tell me how to stop this. Now. Alira looked at him, her pride battling with her fear. Finally, she nodded. There may be a way, but it will require your help. What do you need? Harker asked. The ship's core is beneath us, Alira said. If we can reach it, I might be able to override the system manually. But the path will be dangerous. Harker glanced at his team, then back at Alira. Dangerous is part of the job. Let's move. As the group prepared to descend into the heart of the alien craft, the ship's systems continued to hum ominously. Time was running out, and their survival depended on an uneasy alliance between a proud alien princess and a determined human soldier. Clash of personalities. The dim, pulsing lights of the alien craft cast eerie shadows on the walls as Captain Harker and Princess Alira moved cautiously through the corridors. The atmosphere inside the ship was tense, heavy with unspoken mistrust. The faint hum of the ship's systems served as a constant reminder that time was running out. Stay close, Harker said, his voice low but firm. Alira glanced at him, her golden eyes flashing with annoyance. I am not one of your soldiers, human. I do not take orders. No, you're not, Harker shot back. But unless you want this ship to turn us into ash, you might want to start acting like a team player. Alira's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Instead, she held up the glowing device that had triggered the lockdown. Its symbol shifted and pulsed like a heartbeat, a strange rhythm that seemed almost alive. This is a living ship, Alira said, her tone sharp and impatient. It responds to emotional energy, fear, anger, pride. It reads us like a book, deciding if we are a threat. Harker raised an eyebrow. Great, so we're trapped in a floating mood ring that wants to kill us. Fantastic. Alira ignored his sarcasm and pointed ahead. The core is down this way. But the path is designed to test intruders. It will not be easy. The corridor they entered was narrow and cold, lined with panels that flickered erratically. As they moved, the ship seemed to react to their presence. The walls shifted subtly, as though the craft itself was alive and watching. Is it just me, or is this place getting creepier? Sergeant Brooks muttered, gripping his blaster tightly. It's not just you, Harker replied, his eyes scanning for any signs of danger. Without warning, the floor beneath them trembled, and a section of the corridor dissolved into a black void. Harker grabbed Alira's arm, pulling her back just in time. Careful, he snapped. This ship isn't playing around. Alira yanked her arm free, glaring at him. I don't need your help. Could have fooled me, Harker retorted. Before Alira could respond, the walls ahead began to shift again. Panels slid open, revealing sleek, mechanical arms tipped with sharp, glowing blades. The arms moved with fluid precision, blocking the path. Great, Harker said dryly. Let me guess. Another test. Alira nodded. It's testing our ability to adapt. The ship values intellect and composure. Composure, ha, Harker said, his tone laced with irony. Well, let's hope it's not expecting a lot of that from me. Harker moved first, studying the pattern of the blades. They moved in deliberate, calculated arcs, leaving small gaps in between swipes. It was like a deadly dance. We have to time our movements carefully, Harker said. Follow my lead. Alira hesitated, clearly unused to taking orders. But as the blades whirred ominously, she nodded reluctantly. Harker darted forward, weaving through the blades with surprising agility for someone his size. Alira followed, her movements graceful and precise. Behind them, Brooks cursed as a blade grazed his sleeve, but he managed to keep up. When they reached the other side, Alira turned to Harker, her expression a mix of grudging respect and irritation. "You're more skilled than I expected." "Thanks," Harker said with a smirk. "You're not so bad yourself, for a royal." Alira's eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake competence for approval, Captain. I am here because I must be. And I'm here because I don't want to die," Harker replied. "So how about we focus on surviving instead of trading insults?" They continued deeper into the ship, the tension between them simmering just below the surface. The next challenge came in the form of a room filled with floating orbs of light. The orbs hummed softly, but as Alira stepped forward, they flared brightly, sending arcs of energy crackling toward her. Harker pulled her back again. "Careful. What are these things?" "They're guardians," Alira said, her voice tight. "They react to movement. If we disturb them, they will attack." "Fantastic," Harker muttered. He looked around the room, his mind racing. "Is there a way to shut them off?" Alira studied the glowing device in her hand. "I might be able to confuse their signals, but I'll need time." "Time we don't have," Harker said. He turned to Brooks. "Cover her. I'll distract the orbs." "Are you insane?" Alira hissed. "You'll get yourself killed." Harker shrugged. "Better me than all of us. Just do your thing, princess." Without waiting for her response, Harker dashed into the room, drawing the orb's attention. The glowing lights swarmed around him, crackling with energy. He dodged and rolled, narrowly avoiding the arcs of electricity. Alira watched him, her jaw tightening. For a human, he was reckless, but there was something infuriatingly admirable about his determination. Shaking her head, she focused on the device, her fingers moving quickly over its surface. "Almost there," she muttered. Harker grunted as an arc of energy singed his shoulder. Any time now would be great. With a final press, the orbs dimmed and drifted back to their original positions. The room fell silent. Harker slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. "You're welcome," Alira said coolly, though there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. Yeah, Harker muttered. "Don't get all soft on me now, princess." As they moved closer to the core, Alira couldn't help but glance at Harker. He was frustrating, brash, and entirely too confident, but he was also resourceful and surprisingly brave. Harker caught her looking and smirked. "See something you like?" Alira rolled her eyes. "Only a fool who doesn't know when to stop talking." "Fair enough," Harker replied with a chuckle. Despite their differences, a strange sense of camaraderie was beginning to form. They still didn't trust each other, but for now, they had no choice but to rely on one another. Ahead of them, the final barrier to the ship's core loomed. Whatever lay beyond, they would have to face it together. The enemy within. The ship's eerie hum grew louder as Harker, Alira, and Brooks moved deeper into its labyrinthine corridors. Every step felt like a gamble, the air thick with tension. Harker's instincts were on edge, sharpened by years of combat. Something wasn't right, and it wasn't just the ship. "I don't like this," Brooks muttered, gripping his blaster. "Feels like we're being watched." "You are," Alira said, her voice calm but unsettling. "The ship is always watching. It adapts to our presence." "Great," Harker muttered. "Let's hope it doesn't adapt us straight into an airlock." Alira ignored him, her sharp eyes scanning the walls. There was something she wasn't saying. Harker could feel it. "You know something," he said, stopping in his tracks. "What is it?" Alira hesitated, then sighed. "The ship's systems are sensitive. They respond not just to us, but to anything foreign. If there's another presence aboard, the ship will react to that as well." Another presence, Brooks said, his voice rising slightly. Like what? Before Alira could answer, a distant noise echoed through the corridor. It was faint at first, a soft scraping sound, like metal against metal. Like that? Harker asked, raising his blaster. Alira's expression darkened. Exactly like that. They followed the sound cautiously, the corridors narrowing as they went. The scraping grew louder, more erratic. It wasn't just a sound. It was deliberate. Whatever was making it wanted them to know it was there. Harker raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "Stay here," he whispered. "No," Alira said sharply. "If there's danger, we face it together." Harker gave her a look but didn't argue. They moved as a unit, their steps slow and deliberate. The corridor opened into a small chamber, dimly lit by flickering panels. In the center of the room stood a creature unlike anything Harker had ever seen. It was tall and angular, its body a patchwork of organic and mechanical parts. Its eyes glowed a sickly green, scanning the room with cold precision. "What is that?" Brooks whispered, his voice barely audible. "A shadow assassin," Alira said, her tone grim. "Bioengineered. It's here for me." The creature turned its head sharply at the sound of her voice, locking onto her. Without hesitation, it lunged. Harker fired first, his blaster lighting up the room with rapid bursts of energy. The shot struck the creature's metallic armor, barely slowing it down. Alira moved quickly, pulling a small curved blade from her belt and slashing at the assassin as it closed in. The creature was fast, too fast. It twisted and turned, evading their attacks with inhuman agility. Brooks fired from the side, his shots grazing the creature's leg, but it didn't even flinch. "We can't kill it," Alira shouted, ducking under a swipe from the assassin's razor-sharp claws. "Its body repairs itself too quickly." "Then what do you suggest?" Harker growled, narrowly avoiding a strike. "We outsmart it," she said, her eyes narrowing. "This way." She bolted toward a side corridor, and Harker and Brooks followed without question. The assassin pursued them, its movements eerily silent despite its size. Alira led them into a circular chamber with glowing panels lining the walls. She quickly approached one of the panels, her fingers flying over the alien symbols. "What are you doing?" Harker demanded, keeping his blaster trained on the entrance. "Setting a trap," she said. "This room is a maintenance hub. I can redirect the ship's defense systems here." The assassin entered the chamber, its green eyes glowing brighter as it prepared to strike. Harker and Brooks opened fire, trying to buy Alira more time. The creature dodged and weaved, its claws slashing through the air. "Hurry up, princess," Harker shouted. "Almost there," Alira muttered. With a final press of her fingers, the room's panels flared to life. Bright beams of energy shot out from the walls, converging on the assassin. The creature shrieked, its body writhing as the beams locked it in place. For a moment, it seemed to struggle against the energy, but the ship's systems overpowered it. The assassin dissolved into a fine mist, its biomechanical parts disintegrating under the intense light. The room fell silent. Harker lowered his blaster, his breathing heavy. "Well, that was fun." "Fun," Alira said, turning to him with a glare. "That assassin was sent to kill me. It's no coincidence it was here." "And who sent it?" Harker asked. Alira hesitated, her jaw tightening. "My people," she admitted. "There is a coup in my kingdom. Some believe I am unfit to rule. That assassin was their message." Harker stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. "Great. So we're stuck on a ship trying to kill us, and now we've got your political drama to deal with too." Alira straightened, her expression defiant. "I didn't ask for your help, Captain. But if you're going to survive, you'll need me as much as I need you." Harker smirked. "You've got a funny way of saying thank you." Before Alira could respond, the ship's walls pulsed with light. A robotic voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in the alien language. "What now?" Brooks groaned. Alira's face grew pale. The ship's navigation has been reactivated. We're being taken somewhere. Where? Harker asked. To the heart of a war zone, Alira said grimly. And if we don't stop it, we'll be walking straight into the hands of my enemies. Harker sighed, gripping his blaster tightly. Of course we are. Let's move. With that, they set off again, the tension between them growing heavier with every step. The maze of truths. The alien craft slowed to a halt, the deep hum of its engines fading into silence. Outside the narrow viewport, a dense asteroid field stretched endlessly, its massive rocks drifting lazily in the void. Harker leaned against the control panel, scanning the shifting landscape with narrowed eyes. Something about this place felt wrong. This is no ordinary asteroid field, Alira said, breaking the silence. She stood beside him, her golden eyes locked on the view. We're at the entrance to a Valthar stronghold. A stronghold? Harker asked, his tone edged with suspicion. Your stronghold? No, Alira replied, her voice quiet but firm. It belongs to the rebels who want me dead. Harker turned to her, his jaw tightening. And your ship brought us here on purpose. Why? Alira hesitated, her gaze dropping for the first time since they'd met. It's not the ship. The device I carry. It holds information vital to my people. The rebels want it as much as they want my life. The ship is responding to their signal. So, it's a trap, Harker said flatly. Perfect. The Starfire's crew docked with the alien stronghold cautiously. The station was carved into the largest asteroid, its jagged surface disguising a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. As they stepped inside, the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were watching. Why aren't they attacking? Brooks asked, his blaster raised as they moved through the dimly lit corridors. They don't need to, Alira said. They know we're here, and they're waiting for us to make the first move. Fantastic, Harker muttered, his eyes scanning the shadows. Let's make sure our first move doesn't get us killed. The group entered a vast chamber filled with strange machinery and glowing symbols etched into the walls. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a Valthar scientist, his appearance both familiar and alien. His robes shimmered with faint light, and his face bore markings similar to Alira's, though his were older, more intricate. Princess Alira, the scientist said, his voice calm but cold. You've brought humans to our sacred ground. How desperate you must be. Desperation is a luxury I cannot afford, Merak, Alira replied, her tone steely. We need safe passage and repairs to this ship. Merak tilted his head, his sharp eyes studying her. And why would I help the exiled daughter of a fallen house? Harker stepped forward, his blaster aimed at the scientist. Because if you don't, we'll turn this place into scrap metal. Merak's lips curled into a faint smile. Typical human arrogance. But I'll humor you. For now. As Merak began working on the ship's systems, Harker's unease grew. The scientist was too calm, too confident. It wasn't long before Harker spotted a small device in Merak's hand, his fingers moving subtly over its surface. What are you doing? Harker demanded, raising his weapon. Merak didn't flinch, merely stabilizing the ship's core. You wouldn't want it to overload, would you? Captain, Alira said, stepping between them. We don't have time for this. Let him finish. Harker's eyes didn't leave Merak. And what if he's calling for reinforcements? Reinforcements, Merak said, feigning innocence. What need have I for reinforcements when you've walked willingly into my hands? At that moment, the chamber trembled, and a deafening alarm blared. Lights flickered, and the walls seemed to shift as armed Valthar rebels poured into the room. They were heavily armed, their sleek weapons aimed at the group. Guess I was right, Harker muttered, stepping back toward Alira. You sure know how to pick your allies. Alira glared at Merak. You betrayed me. Merak shrugged. Betrayal implies loyalty. I've never hidden my disdain for your rule. As the rebels closed in, Alira quickly pressed a sequence on her glowing device. The symbols on the walls flared brightly, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing an escape route. "This way," she shouted. The group sprinted down the narrow passage as the rebels fired after them. The walls pulsed with light, responding to Alira's commands as she led them through the maze-like corridors. Harker covered their rear, his blaster taking out 2 rebels who got too close. "Any chance this maze has an exit?" he called out. "Trust me," Alira replied, her tone sharper than usual. "I know what I'm doing." "Funny," Harker said, ducking under a low-hanging beam. "That's what everyone says right before they get us killed." They emerged into another chamber, smaller but heavily reinforced. Alira approached a control panel, her fingers flying over the symbols. "What are you doing now?" Brooks asked, breathing heavily. "Activating the station's defenses," Alira said. "If we're lucky, we can trap the rebels inside." "And if we're not lucky?" Harker asked. Alira glanced at him, a faint smirk on her lips. "Then I hope you're good at improvising." The walls of the chamber trembled as the defenses activated. Panels slid open, revealing automated turrets that began firing at the rebels pouring into the corridors. The air filled with the sound of energy blasts and echoing screams. "Not bad," Harker admitted, watching as the rebels fell back. "For a princess." Alira didn't respond, her focus on the controls. "This isn't over yet. We still need to get back to the ship before they regroup." As they made their way back to the docking bay, the tension between Alira and Harker finally came to a head. "Why didn't you tell us this place was crawling with your enemies?" Harker demanded. "Would it have changed anything?" Alira shot back. "You would still have come, because you had no other choice." Harker opened his mouth to argue, but the distant sound of approaching reinforcements cut him off. "Later," he said, motioning for the group to move. "Let's just get out of here." With the rebels hot on their heels, they boarded the ship and launched into the asteroid field. The stronghold's defenses, now fully active, gave them enough cover to escape. As the ship drifted back into the void, Harker turned to Alira. "You keep a lot of secrets, Princess. One of these days, it's going to get us killed." Alira met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "And yet, here we are, still alive." "For now," Harker thought, his grip tightening on the controls. But he couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. The Battle of Wits. The alien craft trembled violently as warning lights flickered throughout the ship. Outside the viewport, a fleet of sleek, black Valthar rebel ships emerged from the shadows of the asteroid field. Their angular designs glimmered faintly, their weapons already charging. The odds were overwhelming, and the first volley of plasma bolts streaked toward them like fiery comets. "Shields up," Harker barked, gripping the control panel. "Mara, give me something on those ships." Lieutenant Mara's voice crackled through the comms. "They're fast, Captain. Advanced cloaking tech and weapons we can't match. We're outgunned." "I didn't need the summary," Harker snapped. "Just give me options." Alira, standing beside him, studied the rebel fleet with narrowed eyes. "They're using old Valthar formation patterns. Predictable, if you know what to look for." "Well, Princess, now's the time to impress me," Harker said, turning the ship sharply to evade another volley. The craft groaned in protest. Alira stepped forward, her fingers dancing over the glowing alien console. Symbols shifted and pulsed under her touch, responding to her command. The ship's holographic interface sprang to life, displaying the fleet's formation and trajectories. "They'll move to box us in," Alira said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If we exploit the gap between their second and third flanks, we can break through." "And go where?" Harker demanded. "We're sitting ducks out here." Alira's lips curved into a faint smile. "To the asteroid field. This ship knows how to navigate its terrain better than they do." The rebel fleet closed in, their ships moving with military precision. Harker clenched his jaw as plasma fire rocked the alien craft, alarms blaring around them. He threw the ship into a sharp dive, weaving through the oncoming fire. Alira's plan depended on perfect timing, and the rebels were giving them no room for error. "You're asking me to trust a ship that's tried to kill us since we got here," Harker said, his tone tight. "The ship responds to will," Alira replied. "Focus on survival, and it will adapt." "Great advice," Harker muttered, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. "Too bad I don't speak alien mood swing." Brooks, manning the rear turret, shouted over the comms. "Captain, they're closing in fast. I can't hold them off much longer." "Hang on," Harker growled, banking the ship hard to the left. Alira's holographic display highlighted the gap she'd mentioned, a narrow opening in the rebel formation. It was closing rapidly. "Now, Captain," Alira urged. Harker didn't hesitate. He gunned the engines, pushing the craft to its limits as it shot toward the gap. The rebel ships fired relentlessly, plasma bolts scorching the hull. Brooks returned fire, managing to disable one pursuer, but the rest pressed on. As they entered the asteroid field, the rebels hesitated. The massive rocks shifted unpredictably, their jagged surfaces a deadly obstacle. The alien craft, guided by Alira's commands, moved with startling grace, weaving through the debris. "They won't follow us in too deep," Alira said confidently. "Their ships are fast, but not agile enough for this environment." "Good," Harker said. "Now let's make them regret coming this far." The ship's holographic interface displayed the asteroid field in vivid detail. Alira tapped rapidly, activating dormant systems within the craft. Strange, pulsating energy beams began to emit from the ship, bouncing off the asteroids and creating a network of glowing pathways. "What is that?" Brooks asked, his voice filled with awe and confusion. "A distraction," Alira said, her tone matter-of-fact. "The energy field will scramble their sensors and make them fire at shadows." The rebel fleet hesitated as the glowing pathways filled their screens with false targets. Plasma fire erupted, but most of it struck harmlessly against the asteroids. Meanwhile, Alira guided their craft deeper into the field, using the chaos to mask their movements. "Not bad," Harker admitted, "but they'll catch on eventually." "They won't have to," Alira said, her expression turning grim. "They'll call reinforcements soon." "And we're back to having no options," Harker muttered. As they navigated the maze of asteroids, Alira's device began to pulse with a faint, rhythmic glow. She stared at it, her face unreadable. "What's that thing doing now?" Harker asked, his suspicion clear. Alira hesitated before answering. "It's signaling something, a defensive mechanism hidden within this field." "What kind of mechanism?" Brooks asked, nervously glancing at the shifting rocks around them. Alira's voice dropped. "A minefield. The asteroids are armed." Harker's eyes widened. "And you're just telling us this now?" "I didn't know it was still active." Alira shot back. "But we can use it to our advantage. If I can access the controls, I can direct the mines toward the rebels. Or blow us to bits," Harker said dryly. "Do you have a better idea?" Alira countered. Harker sighed. "Fine. Do it." Alira worked quickly, her hands moving with precision over the alien console. The device in her hand synced with the ship's systems, and the minefield began to shift. Asteroids moved in unnatural patterns, glowing faintly as the mines within them activated. The rebels, sensing the danger, attempted to retreat, but it was too late. The mines detonated in a cascading chain reaction, sending shockwaves through the field. Rebel ships were caught in the explosions, their sleek designs crumpling under the onslaught. Harker watched the chaos unfold, a grim smile on his face. "I'll give you this, Princess. You're full of surprises." Alira didn't respond. Her focus remained on the device, ensuring the mines wouldn't target their own ship. When the last explosion faded, the asteroid field was silent once more. As they emerged from the field, the rebel fleet lay in ruins behind them. The tension in the ship eased slightly, but Harker knew better than to relax. "That was close, Brooks said, slumping in his seat. Too close, Harker agreed. He turned to Alira. You got us out of this one, but don't think I've forgotten how we got into it. Alira met his gaze, her expression calm but unyielding. We're alive, Captain. For now, that's all that matters. Harker shook his head, muttering under his breath. He didn't trust her, but he couldn't deny her resourcefulness. And as much as he hated to admit it, they still needed each other to survive. Ahead, the vast expanse of space awaited, filled with dangers yet unseen. But for now, they had won this battle, if only barely. A test of loyalty. The Starfire docked with the massive Valthar royal flagship, its sleek, obsidian hull gleaming ominously against the backdrop of space. The crew had little choice but to follow the orders of Alira's royal guards, whose sharp ceremonial armor reflected their rigid discipline. The moment they stepped aboard, Captain Harker felt the weight of their judgmental stares. This wasn't a rescue, it was an interrogation. You are to remain silent unless spoken to, barked a tall guard with a scar running down his cheek. His tone made it clear that humans were unwelcome. Harker's jaw tightened, but he held back a retort. His instincts screamed at him to prepare for a fight. Behind him, Brooks shifted uneasily, his hand inching toward his weapon. Relax, Brooks, Harker murmured. Let's not give them a reason to kill us. Alira stepped forward, her posture regal despite her weariness. Enough, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I am the rightful heir to the Valthar throne. Your duty is to protect me, not question my decisions. The scared guard sneered. Your decisions have brought a human onto our sacred vessel, Princess. That alone is reason enough to question your judgment. Alira's gaze hardened, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned and marched toward the tribunal chamber, her head held high. Harker and Brooks followed, flanked by guards who watched their every move. The tribunal chamber was vast and imposing, its high ceilings adorned with glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with unspoken power. A semicircle of elder Valthar leaders sat behind a curved platform, their expressions cold and calculating. At the center of the chamber stood a dais, where Alira was expected to stand and answer for her actions. Harker and Brooks were forced to stand at the back of the room, their presence an obvious affront to the Valthar elders. Princess Alira. The elder in the center began, his voice deep and resonant. You stand accused of abandoning your duties, consorting with humans, and endangering the sovereignty of the Valthar people. How do you plead? Alira stepped onto the dais, her expression calm but resolute. I plead only for the survival of our people, she said. The rebels have risen against us, seeking to destroy everything we hold dear. I carry the knowledge to stop them, but I was betrayed and hunted. The humans saved my life. Without them, I would not stand before you now. The chamber erupted into murmurs. The elders exchanged glances, their skepticism clear. Safe by humans, the lead elder said, his tone dripping with disdain. And what price did they demand for such heroism? They demanded nothing, Alira said firmly. Their actions were driven by honor and necessity, qualities we claim to value but seem to have forgotten. At the back of the room, Harker's eyes scanned the chamber. Something wasn't right. The tension in the air wasn't just political, it was personal. He caught sight of a younger guard standing near the elders. The guard's hand rested too casually on the hilt of his weapon, and his eyes flicked nervously between the dais and the elders. Brooks, Harker whispered. You see that guy? Brooks followed his gaze and nodded. Yeah. What's his deal? I don't know, Harker said, his voice low. But I don't trust him. The trial continued, with the elders pressing Alira on every decision she'd made. Each question was sharper than the last, designed to undermine her authority. Finally, the lead elder leaned forward, his gaze piercing. You claim the rebels have infiltrated our ranks, yet you bring no proof. Do you expect us to act on your word alone? Alira hesitated, her confidence wavering for the first time. I possess evidence within the device I carry, but it requires time to decode. She lies, a voice interrupted, echoing through the chamber. The young guard Harker had noticed stepped forward, his expression filled with righteous anger. The princess has betrayed us all. She has aligned herself with the humans to seize power for herself. Gasps filled the chamber. Alira turned to the guard, her eyes wide with disbelief. How dare you? You dare question my loyalty? The guard shot back. I have served the Valfar faithfully, unlike you. Harker's instincts screamed at him to act. He stepped forward, drawing the attention of the entire room. Captain Harker, the lead elder said coldly, you will remain silent. Like hell I will, Harker said, his voice steady but firm. That guy isn't loyal to your people. He's working with the rebels. The guard's face twisted in rage. How dare you accuse me, human? Because I've seen your kind before, Harker said, stepping closer. Your hand's been twitching since we got here. That's not nerves, that's guilt. You've got something to hide, and I'm betting it's big. The guard drew his weapon, aiming it at Harker. The room erupted into chaos as the elders shouted for order. Before the guard could fire, Alira acted. With a sharp motion, she activated her device, sending a pulse of energy through the room. The guard's weapon short-circuited, and he staggered back, clutching his hand. Enough, Alira shouted, her voice ringing with authority. This man is a traitor. Search him, and you will find the truth. The scared guard stepped forward, restraining the younger guard and searching him. Moments later, he produced a small, glowing communicator. The room fell silent as the communicator displayed a series of messages, detailed plans for the rebels' next attack. The lead elder's expression darkened. Traitor, he spat, glaring at the younger guard. You have brought shame upon us all. As the traitor was dragged away, the elders turned their attention back to Alira. Their expressions were still stern, but there was a glimmer of respect in their eyes. You have proven yourself, the lead elder said. But this is far from over. The rebels will not rest until they have destroyed us. I know, Alira replied. But with the humans' help, we have a chance to stop them. Harker crossed his arms, smirking slightly. Told you we're not so bad. The lead elder's gaze lingered on Harker for a moment before he nodded. Very well. For now, we will tolerate your presence, but do not mistake this for trust. Harker shrugged. Wouldn't dream of it. As the tribunal adjourned, Alira turned to Harker, a rare smile gracing her lips. You may be insufferable, Captain, but you're not useless. I'll take that as a compliment, Harker said, grinning. But even as the tension eased, Harker couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was still ahead. Dignity restored. The royal flagship trembled violently as explosions echoed through its halls. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and a robotic voice droned warnings in the alien language. Harker sprinted down the corridor, his boots pounding against the metallic floor. Behind him, Alira struggled to keep up, the glowing device clutched tightly in her hand. Tell me you've got a plan for this, Harker shouted over the din. I do, Alira replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. But it involves not dying in the next 5 minutes. Solid start, Harker quipped, glancing back at her, but maybe include how we stop the bomb. The traitorous guard's desperate last act had been a hidden device, a compact, glowing orb buried deep within the flagship's core. It pulsed ominously, each flash brighter than the last. The elders had been evacuated, leaving Alira and Harker to deal with the ticking time bomb. The two skidded into the core chamber, a vast room filled with shifting, glowing panels and a pulsating central energy conduit. The bomb sat precariously at its base, wires snaking into the conduit as if feeding on its power. Of course, it's hooked into your main systems, Harker muttered, kneeling to examine the bomb. Why make it easy? It's designed to overload the ship's core, Alira said, scanning the symbols flashing on the conduit's surface. If it detonates, it'll take us, and every ship within range, with it. Fantastic, Harker said, pulling out a small multi-tool. "You focus on the core. I'll deal with this thing." Alira hesitated. "Do you even know what you're doing?" "Nope," Harker said, flashing a grin. "But I'm great under pressure." Alira muttered something in her native tongue that Harker suspected wasn't a compliment, but she turned her attention to the conduit, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. The bomb's internal mechanisms were a tangle of wires, energy crystals, and alien tech that made no sense to Harker. He worked quickly, cutting and isolating wires, relying on instinct and sheer luck. Each snip made the bomb pulse faster, as if mocking him. "You're not helping, you know," Harker said to the device. "Talking to it won't stop it," Alira called out, her tone laced with tension. "Worth a shot," Harker replied, sweat dripping down his face. "How's it going over there?" "I've stabilized the core," Alira said, her voice clipped. "But if you don't disarm that bomb in the next 60 seconds, stabilization won't matter." "No pressure," Harker muttered, his hands moving faster. The bomb let out a high-pitched whine, and the lights on its surface turned a menacing red. Harker froze for a split second, then made a snap decision. He yanked out the largest crystal, holding his breath as the bomb's lights flickered. For a moment, it seemed to power down, but then it flared brighter than ever. Bad news," Harker said. "I think I made it angrier." Alira swore under her breath and abandoned the controls, rushing to his side. "Move," she commanded, shoving him aside. Harker scowled but obeyed, watching as Alira's deft hands flew over the bomb's mechanisms. She muttered to herself in her language, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "You've done this before?" Harker asked, his voice a mix of awe and anxiety. "No," Alira said flatly, "but I'm better at improvising than you." "Debatable," Harker said, but he didn't push further. The bomb's whine reached a fever pitch, and Alira suddenly slammed her hand down on the glowing device she always carried. A pulse of energy surged through the room, and the bomb's lights dimmed before shutting off completely. The silence that followed was deafening. Alira exhaled deeply, her shoulders slumping. "It's done." "Good teamwork," Harker said, standing and brushing himself off. "I distract the death machine, you save the day." Classic partnership. Alira gave him a sidelong glance. "If you're done congratulating yourself, we should check the core." As they returned to the conduit, Alira verified that the core was stable. The flagship's systems began to hum with renewed energy, and the red emergency lights faded into a soothing blue. The crisis was over. The Royal Guards arrived shortly after, their expressions a mix of relief and lingering suspicion. The scared guard, now leading the group, gave Harker a grudging nod. "You've earned your place aboard this ship, human," he said, "but don't let it go to your head." "Too late," Harker quipped. Alira rolled her eyes but turned to the guard. "Have the traitors' network tracked and dismantled. We cannot allow another attack." The guard saluted and left to carry out her orders. Later, in the ship's observation deck, Harker and Alira stood side by side, staring out at the stars. The tension between them had eased, replaced by a quiet understanding. "So," Harker said, breaking the silence, "Princess saves the day, restores order, and gets a shiny new chapter in her royal legacy. What now?" Alira tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Now, I rebuild. My people need a leader they can trust, and the humans need an ambassador who understands them." Harker raised an eyebrow. "You volunteering for that job?" "Perhaps," Alira said, "but only if you agree to assist." Harker chuckled. "Me? Diplomacy's not really my thing." "No," Alira said, her smile widening slightly. "But chaos seems to follow you, and that might be exactly what we need." Harker grinned. "Well, when you put it like that, how can I say no?" As the flagship prepared to return to Valthar space, a faint signal came through the communication channels. Harker and Alira exchanged a glance as the signal played. A distorted voice warning of a far greater threat, one that loomed in the shadows of the galaxy. "Guess the adventure's not over yet," Harker said, his tone both wary and excited. Alira nodded. No, it's just beginning. The stars outside shimmered, and the flagship surged forward, carrying its unlikely allies toward an uncertain future, bound by wit, honor, and a shared resolve to face whatever lay ahead.